Hi everybody, I am Marina Michaelis,
And I'm the Dark Conservatarian.
and today I'll be doing a video response to Hi I Think I'm Real.
And I'm here to join her to help respond to Hi I Think I'm Real and to help edit her video.
So let's begin. Take it away, Real.
The real Joan of Arc. She was born into a peasant family of farmers in the northeast of France, which makes her neither Ukrainian, Jewish, Dutch, or American. However, Mila Jovovich and Lily Sobieski, who are of Ukrainian and Jewish descent respectively, both of whom are also Americans, played Joan of Arc in the same year, 1999. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember any racially inspired outrage for those casting decisions.
That's because that, at least as far as I know anyways, the historical figure Joan of Arc was white, and it is possible for you to have an American or Ukrainian play a white French girl, just as long as they can nail down the French accent anyways.
To me, that is a false equivalence. Race and nationality aren't the exact same thing. You can be an American in white, you can be an American in black, you can be an American in Asian.
Let's also not forget that you could be Asian and Russian, brown and German, and yes, you can even be black and French, but that's not the issue right here. By the historical pictures, at least, of how Joan of Arc is portrayed, she seems to be pretty pasty to me.
There can be a French person who looks exactly like Angelina Jolie. There can be a Dutch person who looks like Angelina Jolie. There could be a person from, Australia that looks like Angelina Jolie. For many people, when they think of race, they think of skin color. People don't think race American because how do you explain black Americans, Asian Americans? How do you explain, if Americans are all one race, why would the police ask you if a person is black, if a person is white, if a person is Asian? These things are not really the same thing. Because it is possible for a person with pale skin to look like Joan of Arc, whether that person is an American or Dutch or whatever. It is possible. Even Jewish people, there are black Jewish people, there are Asian Jewish people. There is going to be like a wide variety of people who are Jewish. Jewish is not a race because Jewish people come in all shapes, sizes, and skin colors. It all boils down to who is the closest that looks like Joan of Arc. Like, who is going to look like Joan of Arc the most? You don't have to get everything correct down to the very teeny tiny minute detail. It's just got to be close enough.
So as far as the parameters for race and ethnicity go,
Not race and ethnicity, you're trying to use an example of nationality, Real.
both of these castings are inaccurate, but does that betray the history? Does that betray the performance? Absolutely not.
It may not betray the performance, but it does betray the history. Just have a white person play Martin Luther King Jr. and see what type of responses you would get. Especially since America had a negative racial history when it comes to racial segregation, where race would play a very important role. It would be important for a black person to play Martin Luther King, or else you would be looking at history revisionism. You would be a history revisionist.
As a conservative, I tend to concern myself deeply with merit. I want to see the world move away from valuing identity and instead towards valuing ability.
Well, throughout history, Real, and particularly in the example that Ren brought up of Martin Luther King Jr., throughout history, humanity has had a tendency to value identity over ability. And so, in order to exhibit an accurate representation of history, of how historically these said humans in this said event valued this person's identity over their ability, well then you have to exhibit that identity correctly within the movie. Now, I know that as far as identity goes, historically back then people were making a big fuss over Joan of Arc's gender and not her race, but still, if she was historically black during that event, I can only imagine that the French would have treated her even worse than for being a white female. Who knows? Realistically speaking, if she really was a black female back then, who knows? People might have mistaken her for a Muslim. She probably would have got burnt at the stake a lot sooner than she actually did historically.
With that principle in mind, is it not a betrayal of that meritocratic value to admonish the casting of Condola Rashad because of her racial identity, an identity that she can neither change nor choose?
Joan of Arc couldn't change or choose her identity.
Instead of valuing her based on the merit of her performance.
Do not think you can frighten me by telling me that I am alone. France is alone.
Okay, since we are on the issue of merit of performance, I think, in my opinion, she might be a little bit over the top with her acting. I mean, have you seen those cheesy-ass eye movements she's making in that shot? I mean, what's up with that? Does she think that she's in a cheesy-ass superhero movie? Maybe she's trying to apply to become Iron Lady or something.
Acting is just reading lines. You know, like if acting was more than just reading lines, then child actors wouldn't exist. And there has been so many countless child actors throughout the decades. You're going to find countless talented people across the racial spectrum that could act the role well. So let me put it this way. When it comes to Martin Luther King Jr., if you found a black person that looks exactly and precisely like him, so you could bring Martin Luther King back to life, figuratively speaking, and you found a white person who is an equally talented actor, you know, he's equally talented, and it's just reading lines, dude. So would you hire somebody who looks exactly like Martin Luther King? So it's like the person is brought back to life? Or would you hire a white person to be Martin Luther King?
That's a good point, Ren. If MLK really was white, then that would have really changed the dynamics of the historical events surrounding him. He really wouldn't have had to have struggled as hard to get his political movement going and to get his political statements out and heard.
Or when it comes to Adolf Hitler, would you honestly have a black person who to be Adolf Hitler and change history? I mean, to be a history revisionist?
Oh boy, that probably would have really changed the dynamics of history. Probably even more so than MLK being white.
Or are you going to find somebody who may not, I mean, if we're going to go through DNA, finding it may not be an exact, precise genetic makeup. However, if you find somebody who just looks really, really close, you know, to Adolf Hitler, would you hire that actor instead? It's about finding the person who is most suited towards the role.
Though, to play devil's advocate for real, I think that a person of the same nationality of the character that they're playing as would probably have an easier time of mimicking and impersonating the person's nationality than, say, somebody who isn't part of that nationality. But the point still stands that I would rather have somebody as close to the race of the person that I'm portraying as possible playing as that person. Like, say, for example, I would rather have Morgan Freeman play as MLK despite him having not the same facial features as MLK than, say, John Goodman play as MLK.
And speaking of performance, this leads me to my next point about the broader nature of outrage culture. You would be hard-pressed to convince me that any of the outrage sycophants on the internet are Broadway regulars who would actually buy tickets to every group consistently. Casting a non-French actress to play Joan of Arc would be as much a betrayal of that standard as casting Ryan Gosling to play Martin Luther King Jr.
Again, you are comparing apples to oranges. Race doesn't equal nationality.
I'm going to be blunt right now. Usually Real is a pretty smart guy, but right here, he is just being a flat-out dumbass.
It's up there with saying that Mexican is a race. Mexican is not a race. I mean, if I am willing to work hard and become a citizen, I could be French. You know, you are conflating two things which are not similar. There is going to be a noticeable difference between Ryan Gosling and Martin Luther King Jr. Ryan Gosling is, noticeably a white person, and Martin Luther King Jr. is noticeably a black person. But when it comes to Joan of Arc, a white person could have French descent, a French heritage, or she could actually be a look-alike. Again, I mean, there could be a person, an American, who looks exactly and precisely like a white person from Australia. I don't know why you keep comparing apples to oranges, but it's a false equivalence. It is not a good comparison at all.
The color of a performer's skin is distracting you so much that it's keeping you from exploring those themes in a performance, and I think you're missing the point of why you even consume these things. Maybe that's wrong.
Because maybe it's not a good idea to be a history revisionist. And at what point, would you revise the Holocaust? Because like a person, like different people would be a good job at being Hitler, and different people would do a good job at being Jews. Would you revise, the Jewish history?
No. See, the Holocaust was performed upon a bunch of Russians, not Jews in the least bit.
And at what point of history revisionism would turn you into a Holocaust denier? I mean, how much of history are you willing to revise until you're just giving a slap to the face to the descendants of the people who were suffering from the Holocaust? I mean, to me, you're just revising history if you don't find somebody whom, it seems like you're trying to go for genetic DNA match where somebody has to have the exact and precise DNA genetic makeup as somebody else, when really all you have to do is look close enough to the actual person. That's it. Anyway, this has been Ren Michaelis. Do you agree with me? Do you agree with me? Do you agree with how I think I'm real? I don't hate the guy. I actually love his channel. I love watching his content. This is probably the one and only video I found of his that I actually disagree with. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up, comments, and subscribe. And if you disagree, that is fine. Let's have a conversation about this. Bye-bye.
And I'm the Dark Conservatarian. I'd like to thank Miss Michaelis for giving me another chance to edit and speak on one of her videos on her larger channel. If you liked my smartassery that I edited into this video, check out my channel, and I will see you all in the next guest appearance I make. Bye-bye.